The women of the Congressional Black Caucus are calling on President Trump's chief of staff to apologize to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson for making false claims. General John Kelly recounted a story from 2015 claiming that Wilson patted herself on the back for the funding of an FBI building.
And a congresswoman stood up, and in the long tradition of empty barrels making the most noise, stood up there and all of that, and talked about how she was instrumental in getting the funding for that building, and how she took care of her constituents because she got the money, and she just called up President Obama, and on that phone call, he gave the money, the $20 million to build the building. And she sat down, and we were stunned. Stunned that she'd done it. Even for someone that is that empty a barrel, we were stunned.
Okay, but the video of that building dedication ceremony that's been posted by a Florida newspaper captures Wilson talking about getting congressional and presidential approval to name the building for fallen FBI agents, but not the funding.
Everyone said that's impossible. It takes at least 8 months to a year to complete the process through the House, the Senate, and to the president's office. I said, I'm a school principal, and I said, excuse my French, oh, hell no. We're gonna get this done. And guess what? The president signed the bill into law this past Tuesday, April 7th, 2015, with a bang, bang, bang.
All right, joining me now are two members of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Alma Adams of North Carolina and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas. Nice to see both of you, ladies. Congresswoman Adams, let me start with you. What specifically do you want from John Kelly? What do you want him to say?
Well, he needs to apologize. First of all, he was in error. He did not tell the truth. He knows now that he did not tell the truth, even if he thought he had told it. So he owes her an apology. We're talking about a member of Congress who has done not only great work, but she serves her constituents. She has served on the local level, on the state level, and now she's in Congress, and she's doing a tremendous job. For him to try to demean her character and her integrity in this way is absolutely unacceptable.
So, Congresswoman Lee, if Chief of Staff John Kelly came on and said, my memory failed me, sorry, that's enough?
Well, first of all, let me offer, good morning, let me offer my sympathy to the families of Sergeant Johnson and Johnson and Sergeants Wright and Black. They are the most important in this, and I think Congressman Wilson would agree with me on that. And frankly, I believe there is room for apologies from all in the administration, from Communications Director Sanders, from General Kelly, who is a friend who I know, particularly when he led the Southern Command, and from the President of the United States. The key here is really the first insult of Congresswoman Wilson being accused of listening in to the condolence call from President Trump. She wasn't listening in. She was part of the family in the family car on the way to receive the body. That should be clear. The second thing is people need to understand what the Africa Command is all about. I understand it because I was in Congress when we, the Congressional Black Caucus and others, advocated for the establishment of the Africa Command when Charles Taylor was brutalizing and killing his citizens in Liberia. It's a very important command.
And so
none of this should have been made light of.
Just on that note, did you know that there were 1,000 U.S. troops in Niger?
I didn't know the specifics, but I knew since Congresswoman Wilson and myself were the first delegation to go into Nigeria after the girls were taken, and Congressman Wilson has led that fight to bring back the girls, I knew that Boko Haram had joined ISIL, and in that area of Nigeria, Chad, all in that area, that they were trying to set up another caliphate, if you will, and therefore the Africa Command was standing up. But what should be noted is that all of the individuals that unfortunately died, and we need a full investigation, were sergeants. They were obviously doing some different kind of mission. And that's why this ridiculous back and forth between the White House is untimely, unseemly. And yes, she should be given an apology, first of all, because General Kelly is a Gold Star family member, and he has the right to speak about his loss, and he did eloquently, and I'm sure he brought many to tears. But he had to then defend his boss. His boss is President Trump, who has continued to throw wacky insults at Frederica Wilson. As an African-American woman, I'm not going to stand for it, period. The idea that General Kelly had to lower himself and begin to talk about wrong issues dealing with Congresswoman Wilson, which was completely refuted by the tape, puts everyone in the barrel, if you will. And so Congresswoman Wilson deserves an apology. The president owes her an apology. The military owes the United States Congress, the House of Representatives, a full classified briefing on the actions of the Africa Command in that region, and we can't go any longer without knowing what's going on. But I think she's owed an in-depth apology, and one of the reasons is, of course, is that she is part of the family, and she represented the family in their feeling of an insult of the words of President Trump.
So,
he was not comforting at all.
So, Congressman Adams, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said that getting into a debate with a four-star Marine general is, quote, highly inappropriate. What do you think about those comments?
Well, I think it was highly inappropriate for her to say that. First of all, she should know better. Secondly, he is not above questioning. He is a political servant. He is, and I certainly appreciate all that he's done in the military. We honor that. We honor his family and all the families who have been affected by this recent attack in Nigeria. But he is not above questioning. He stood at the White House podium. I mean, that's what press secretaries do. He's not the press secretary. He is the chief of staff. That was not his responsibility to do it. And of course, if he thought that it was, and he was going to get out there and put himself out there and make that statement, then he should respond to the questions. You know, when you're a political figure, you are responsible and should be responsive to the people.
Congressman Jackson Lee, I want to ask you about the politicization of this entire issue of the phone call to Sergeant Johnson's family. And, you know, obviously President Trump started this by invoking President Obama, saying that he didn't believe that President Obama had made these phone calls. But do you think that also Congresswoman Wilson bears some responsibility for politicizing this, in that, yes, she was privy to that private phone call, but she didn't need to talk about it. She didn't need to publicize the details of that private phone call?
You know, you don't know how hurt the family was. I think we need to recall the facts. And the facts are that Sergeant Johnson's body was not found for 2 days. The initial report, I believe, came out of 3 soldiers that lost their life. One was still missing. Many prayed that he would still be alive, but he was found a mile away from the firefight, vicious firefight. And as I understand it, it was very difficult and for the family for that time period, and as well that they were not able to review his remains. Yeah. That's devastating. Many of us who've gone through the Iraq and Afghanistan, when so many bodies were coming home, so many Gold Star families, and all the other wars, understand the pain. So I think what should be noted is that Congresswoman Wilson was considered a family member. And she might have been speaking, maybe the family could not speak about how hurt they were about the words that President Trump said. And I really think she wasn't doing it to politicize. She was doing it to convey the pain of the family. And the mother indicated that she felt disrespected by the president, she and her husband. Yeah. And you will hear from the mother at some point, meaning the wife at some point. Yes. And they will share with you what they felt. Well, so I think that what Congresswoman Wilson did was speak and give the family voice where the family could not at that time, so broken as they were, they could not speak publicly.
Well, any moment, we actually will hear from Sergeant Johnson's wife, from his widow. She is speaking out this morning, so we will be playing all of that for everyone momentarily. So Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Alma Adams, thank you very much for your perspective on this morning.
Thank you.
Good to be with you, Alma. Good
Thank
to be
you.
with you.
Good to be with you, too.
President, good to be with you.
Yeah,
President Trump